I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. Good morning to each and every one of you. Hoo hoo! Hot, hot show today. We have David Alexander Jenkins at 6:30. We have State Rep Chris Rabb at 7:30. I am looking forward to both of these conversations. As you know, David and I always get into it about what's happening locally, nationally, and around the world. Thank you, Marguerite. She says that canary yellow looks fire on you. Thank you, my darling. I am grateful that you were all able to allow me to have a little bit of a respite over the last week. I had to go see about my father, my sisters, make sure everybody was okay. And so I needed that time. And I was able to get in a road trip. I like flying on airplanes, but baby, there's nothing like humming down the highway in your car, just seeing all kinds of wonderful things. I was able to have great conversations with my siblings, great conversations with our father who is aging, and we're working with him to make sure he's okay as he ages. There's more to that story, but we'll get there over time. And just finding a little bit of breathing room for myself. So I'm going to start the show. I have, and yeah, I made it home by the hair of my skinny chin chin last night, just trying to get off the road. I want to do a little bit of a morning motivation because I had done something here that I wanted to talk about. Let's see, Mother's morning motivation. Uh, there seems to be uh what's the word I'm looking for? There's always been a disquieting disdain for Black women. But over the last several years, I would say the last decade, there seems to be a growing crescendo about who we are and what we bring to the table and the spaces that we must know. The spaces we must know and find ourselves in. And nowhere was it more evident than in the beginning of 2025 when 300 plus thousand people lost their jobs. Many of them women, many of them sisters who had six-figure jobs for decades, working in the federal government and other places. I learned recently last week that another friend who was working for a major company for decades, right? Like she was a senior vice president. They let her go after decades of working with them, bringing all this money to the table, and she's gone, and the company is floundering because they forgot that she was actually the one bringing the wealthy clients to the table. We are seeing these stories more and more and more, and I'm a little concerned at this point about what's happening here. So I want to read this to you, and then I'm going to let David in. In 2018, I wrote a post about a young man who told me to get up from my chair so that he could sit. You see, he was a star athlete and was so pumped up with accolades and praises, he thought he should not have to stand up anywhere he was. I had just sat down after serving him and hundreds more breakfast. So this was at the Penn Relays where I volunteer with Team Jamaica Bickle for the last 20 plus years. I got up to see if he would take the seat. He did. What happened next is something he will never forget. When I tell you that I bathed him in the word according to Mother, the last thing I said to him before I made him get up or I was going to flip his chair like Jesus flipped tables in disgust was that his level of arrogance was going to cost him dearly, no matter how gifted he was. Exactly 1 year later, he made international news for being disgraceful. I rest my case. He avoided me like the plague when he saw me, right? I love young people, but we have got to teach them that leadership comes with responsibility. Arrogance is cute on no one. It reeks like the perfume of a rancid goat. Carry on. P.S. That promising young athlete is now quiet as a church mouse after losing his quote unquote shine. He is so gifted, but he was so arrogant, he felt he was untouchable. Talent alone will take you but so far. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that one alone. Let Dave in so we can get our, my darling.
Good morning.
How are you, sweetie pie?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? In this crazy world that we live in, I am well.
David, I every once in a while, I get up out of my space of let them be, let them. Every once in a while, I get out of the because since November 2024, I've been in the let them mode, and every once in a
Mhm.
while, I see things and I say, "Ah, shut it! I can't let them today," and I
We
speak on
heard.
things.
We heard you.
I put up a post yesterday. And as I am traveling, as I'm driving back towards Pennsylvania, the amount of people, particularly men, who called me was like, wait, what? Wait, what? I was like, yo, one brother was like, I had to put down my phone because my blood pressure went up and I was trying to figure out who had done what. I said, no one did anything to me. I'm talking, speaking to what I see happening with Black women in particular. And it's not just, I'm not talking about white folks denigrating us because that happens too. I'm talking about us denigrating us, which is crazy to me, right?
I think that we have to also remember. I saw your post. I do receive phone calls about your post. um, Sometimes Black women put Black women down and blame it on Black men. I can't say nothing else about that particular moment. And but I know who said the booby trap. So
Crazy, absolutely insane. And then we throw these stones and we hide our hands like we're not doing anything, right? Right?
particularly in political season, you'll find that I've always I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and they were talking about our election coming and this and the other, and they said that when they were first coming into their job, that they were considered very green because they believed in the democracy that we have, that people will go and vote and make an informed decision. And the person they worked for said, "Oh, you don't understand how this place works. People are anointed, and people move forward, and the machine, the democratic machine, chooses, and that's the end of that." And she said, "Oh, you must be crazy. You don't understand about the American system." They said, "Oh, girl, you must be crazy. You don't understand how this works." And
Mhm.
I have witnessed more of the machine's choosings as I watch defamatory stories. It's interesting to me. Whenever you want to know who's putting something out into the ether,
Mhm.
look at who's not being spoken about.
Mhm.
If everybody but one person is being spoken about, then where's the information coming from?
Mhm. Mhm.
I saw reports about Ayla Stanford and APAC and X, Y, and Z that were pushed out into the Ethernet. I saw reports about Christopher Robb and why he didn't vote in a particular way and what does that mean.
Mhm. Mhm.
We
Which,
seem
by
to
the
be missing
way,
reports.
State Rep Chris Rabb will be on at 7:30 this morning. The
Well,
same
very
way we
good.
asked if you had
Yes.
questions for Dr. Ayla Stanford. If you have questions for him, please let me know. I got some questions this morning to ask him, and those will be considered because I don't always ask every question depending on the conversation that we're having. But if you have some questions for State Rep Chris Rabb this morning, let me know. And I'll ask. Right? He gets the full hour because this is our first time interviewing him here, and so there's a lot that we have to cover in that moment. I am grateful to his people for reaching out because we had been my producer and I had been reaching out. Apparently, we were reaching out to the wrong person that whole time, right? And so the guy, he was like, Andrea, nope, that's not it. We wanted to come on. And so they made it happen while I was up in the mountains somewhere hiking for 5 miles.
Yes.
Literally
Yes.
with no service. I was like, all right, can't do it last week. We can do it this week. Let's figure out a way to make it happen. So this morning at 7:30, he will be on. And I am grateful for the people in these camps that are willing to have the hard conversation, because this audience, I'm telling you, even though we're on real early in the morning, they go back and they watch. This audience shares. This audience is, I would be saying Jamaica, educated. We're not just on here talking all kinds of foolishness. Like, we really are having strong conversations about what needs to be done. And so, David, in the
Mm.
last week, it has gotten
Mm.
really interesting.
Mm.
Really
Well,
interesting.
first of all, we cannot ignore the school board and the school board vote.
Let's discuss.
And yeah, I was I had been at the budget meetings to speak. I actually put up an address about this because I was called back to Philadelphia. I was in Washington, D.C., taking care of some diplomatic state visit for King Charles and Her Majesty Queen Camilla of England, and so was at some garden parties and supposed to be at some embassy events, and came back because I'd left after giving the speeches on the floor from Philadelphia City Council meeting, gone onto the train, gotten down to D.C., and had the surf, and then I watched that horrific debacle. I watched people come out in emotional truth to speak to the board about why the 4,000 children whose lives would be affected by these closures, by these movers, needed some time for consideration. I mean, they weren't even saying this can't happen at all. They were saying we just need time to be able to digest this, think with you, plan with you, this and the other. And they shut down the meeting again, and they went into a private room and casted a private vote. And these people are people who are on the school board, not elected by their peers, but rather appointed by the mayor to sit on this board. So there is a lot of pressure that is now on the executive office about why did you choose these people? What was your direction to them? How are they responsible to you, if they are responsible to you, right? Because they're hand selected in that way.
But David, I don't know if you remember, there was one particular board member that the council did not want on the board. They voted
Mhm.
no for her not to be on the board, and the mayor said, "Well, not so fast. We're going to figure this out." And she ended up staying on the board. She's been quiet as a church mouse, pissing in cotton since then. We have not heard her name, not seen her. But here is my question. So there is an article written here. It says the extraordinary showdown, and this was written by the Philadelphia Inquirer. The
Mhm.
extraordinary showdown at Thursday's Philadelphia School Board meeting, in which members voted to close 17 schools and renovate 169 others, despite being protested by lawmakers and students, laid bare a major rift between City Council and the school district and prompted numerous questions for city leaders. Topping the list, what will the board's new vote mean for Mayor Sherelle L. Parker's plan to help plug the district's budget deficit with a $1 per ride tax on services like Uber and Lyft? Councilmember Jamie Gauthier, one of the lawmakers who shouted down the school board during the contentious meeting, said Friday the board's decision made voting for the rideshare tax much more difficult for her. "I am not fully decided, but I would say they made it harder," Gauthier said in an interview, "because I don't understand how we as council members go to the community and tell them that we're going to make all their trips more expensive while we're shuttering their schools in their faces." But Council President Kenyatta Johnson, who had previously indicated he was willing to use the tax as leverage to force the board to delay or amend on its facilities plan on Thursday, opened the door for the tax to move forward despite the board's decision. Adopting Superintendent Tony B. Watlington Sr.'s facilities plan answered one question: would school officials bow to the enormous pressure being applied by city and state lawmakers? So Watlington made some tweaks to his plan, but the board ultimately declined to bend more. The board did not remove Lancanal High, Robeson High, and Overlook Elementary from the closure list, despite council threatening to withhold funding from the district, sue the school board, and refuse to reappoint any board members who voted yes to approve the plan. So they did all of that. The other question that was brought forth was
Mm.
Isaiah Thomas, who is
Yes.
he is in charge of, he's supposed to be the one that's in charge of what's going on with the schools, right? Because he says he is about, education, et cetera, et cetera. He's education chair. According to reports, he did not have one meeting, not one public meeting about it, but he was there having dialogue around, you can't close these schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would be intrigued to have a conversation with him now around,
Mhm.
why did you wait so long to the last hour and then you only showed up at the board meetings? Again, these are allegations that he did not have. I looked to see where he had meetings, education meetings around this. I saw none. But again, the news doesn't always report what's going on out here. Talk to
So there
me.
were so the normal course of action is to have public hearings at City Council, and there were hearings on this portion of the education bill at City Council. I attended them. I will say to you that one of the last meetings was a budget meeting that dealt directly with the closing of schools. That meeting was hours long. I was there from the start of the meeting until the end of the meeting, where I gave public testimony on the closure. Not only was the public testimony given by many people who were in the room, Philadelphia has been showing up to city council, but the school board was so exhausted that they got up and left before public testimony was given. They did not hear the public. They got up and they left just as the public was getting ready to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the conversation is had, as a person who was standing in the room, who went to the mic and at that time delivered the address, which I have spoken to before, which is that I am 100% pro funding the school board of Philadelphia and funding these schools. I am absolutely baffled by the way that we have chosen to do it. Because
Yes.
what we do time and again is put the pressure on middle class and lower class people who now are going to pay a tax to get to the job that they are forced to go into every day, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
first said we need you to come back to work to boost the economy. They've come back to work. Now they have to pay to get to work. Now we say we'd like to tax you on your drive to the workplace so that you can make the money for people who are wealthy, big industries to continue to flourish in X, Y, and Z. And I, who live in Rittenhouse Square and often look out of my window, which overlooks on one side City Hall, on the other side West Philadelphia, and on another side other parts of the city, think to myself, if I want to buy a condo that is new constructed, you will give me a 10-year tax abatement on everything over $700,000. You will not charge the university eds and meds for the portions of property which do not belong to the 501c3 status as a charitable organization, but rather the pieces like the hotels, the restaurants, the other sorts of retail stores. Those things could be taxed. So we're giving up $130 million on the tax abatement side. We're giving up $120 million on the taxing of eds and meds. We don't require them to even put like other places do, because in Pennsylvania, you cannot just assert a tax on top of eds and meds. But you could, for instance, make them participate in a plan that pays for some of these issues. So when we say we don't know where to find $30 million, I'm able very quickly as a citizen to draw up $250 million that we give away to people who are wealthy, that we give away to corporations, and then we say to people who are really in need and suffering, who cannot afford the burden, the tax is on you.
You.
So when the Board of Education comes to us with this really debacle, what do we do to keep up the facilities? How do we continue to maintain these things? These buildings in many ways are falling apart and old and out of use. When we have them come and say we cannot afford to put real bathrooms in, that's why we have porta potties on some campuses, and we need money for the response to be, we have nowhere to draw money, when I myself know what you are willing to give people like me to stay in the city when we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this issue with the way in which we like to find tax. I think that we have often been a top-down society. That never works. As someone who has lived at the very top of the top, it does not work ever. You must be a grassroots, ground up society. When you take care of the very poorest, the very least among these, they spend their money where? Back in the economy. They go what? To work. They do all these things. And then all of a sudden, the streets look clean and green and energy efficient,
Right.
and big business
In
comes.
the very place where they said they could not afford to, they move out the folks that they don't want there, the undesirables, the people who had been living there, who were forced to live there when they were not allowed to live in the suburbs and other places. They don't give you the services that you currently need.
It's
I am traveling.
exhausting.
It's exhausting. I'm traveling across the country. I have seen more Indian families, baby, wherever the data centers are being built. They have taken over. It's not the Latinos, not the Cubans, not even the black people. There's so many Indian families here now. It was a quiet gold rush of them being here. They're building houses and condominiums to accommodate them, because there are billions of people that live in India. We kept saying, well, where's this money coming from? Where's this money
I
coming
and that's state problem, because there's lots of legislation that would stop those sort of centers being built in the first place.
from?
But I would say on a local level, for the viewers who are in Philadelphia listening, I would rather support a bill that said that we will give you a tax abatement if you buy an old house in Philadelphia, restore it, and
Yes.
and are forced to live there for at least 5 years after
Yes.
restoring it. That bill I'm all about, because that actually helps the housing market. Now we
Yes.
have all of this inventory which needs to be repaired in Philadelphia. Happy for you to buy that at the cost that already exists. Right? These are lower priced homes in the first
Mm-hmm.
place. So why not give the break to the people who are in the middle and lower classes to be able to establish some type of, we say that we want to be a home owning city. Here's this perfect opportunity. We don't miss that huge tax revenue on that. But right now, we stick the whole tax revenue base on the lowest of the class, which doesn't make as much money as it would if we simply just tax the people at 700,000 and up. So it's just this weirdness for me.
Mm-hmm.
And because I get to sit on both sides of the aisle, if you will, because I get to be outside of the rail, I am baffled, often ashamed by the way in which we ignore the people who actually need the help in favor of petting our own asses and making sure that we are reelected in every chair. And I
Amen.
mean that for every chair.
Amen. Amen. And then you add to this, I sat on a school board for 8 years, and we always had a facilities plan. The employees, the salaries and health insurance took up a huge chunk. Then there was another
Mhm.
chunk around making sure that we had the proper books, the proper literature for the children to access, right? Because we're spending X amount of money per child. Excuse me. And then we had a facilities plan. So we were every year we would go through the schools. This is what needs to be done. This is what needs to be done. I find with the Philadelphia school district in particular, where was the facilities plan? So the schools are in the most abysmal shape. The people in elementary schools, children in elementary schools, so there are no bathrooms for them to go to. And the Philadelphia school district's response was, well, oh well, but we're working on it. If this
Well, I
were
mean, and
anywhere else,
yes, but then we made sure that developers that wanted to come to the city and do work were building new townhouses in Rittenhouse Square. We did everything in our possible ability to make sure that Comcast could build its two towers in the utmost comfort. We have done everything. We have played checkers on a board of chess when it came to talking about the 76ers and where people would dribble a piece of rubber down a parquet fucking floor, excuse me. But we don't give a damn about what happens to the people who are in the streets trying to figure out how to breathe and live and succeed every day. Philanthropically, we have all this to say, right? Pretentiously, we have all of this to say, oh, we're helping, we're helping, we're helping. If you don't want to starve anymore, we'll send you to a 3-year institution to get a new job, to raise your credit score to a 585, where you can then apply for a city grant to get a house. So in 7 years, if you haven't died because you haven't eaten by then we can help you.
it's amazing. And then when there's a lack of education, our children are not able to compete for these tech jobs. It's just not there. They're not able to read all the things. So you're failing the children, and then you wonder why all these other things are going on out here. I don't get it. Maybe I do get it, but to what end?
It's just it's hard for me. Um, because you get to watch both sides at the same time and you get to
Mhm,
watch the puppet game be played. And I want to just say that this affects what happens here is not just an isolated bubble, right?
mhm,
The federal government has just passed down laws that said they will basically obliterate every bit of the Voting Rights Act. And that now means that the pressure of what will happen to Black and Brown families in
mhm.
America across the country will change. The representation will change. And I don't want you to think that that's not going to trickle down into Philadelphia politics too,
Child.
because we see a very reactive government here and not
Mhm,
necessarily the most proactive of governments here. And
mhm.
so while we have lovely, I mean, I listen to the plans and you think, oh my God, what wonderful things are happening. And then I see how we implement the plans and I go, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
So I want us to be vigilant and to be aware that the things that are happening on a national stage are really taking seed and growing in the personal lives that you have today. And people say, well, what can we actually do? And one of the things you can actually do is you can show up. You can come and you can be on the record with your voice. And if
Mhm,
it means that the people who are supposed to listen have gotten up and gone to lunch, that's
mhm.
okay. Stay, put it on the record, be in the faces of those that you need to be the faces of, because their job is that they must listen to you. They can't not listen to you at the end of the day.
I noticed that when I went to the city council meeting, that some of the city council members just got up and what was that? Never to return. What happened? It's your meeting. Why are
That,
you not sitting in your meeting? And all their faces are everywhere. Their eyes are over
oh
here.
yeah.
They're talking to this one. That are they actually listening?
Well, and so there are some members of city council who believe as I do, that the most important part of the entire meeting is public comment. Because without public comment, you don't listen to the constituent to hear what is necessary, to hear what is needed. There are lots of questions being raised about public comment. One is the Sunshine Act, which provides that each person is supposed to have 3 minutes at least to be able to dispel their ideas. We sometimes have 2 minutes, sometimes one, at the discretion of the chair. There are comments about the fact that public comment is limited to the matters prima facie. So that's which is on the page before you. The public comment perhaps should be limited to issues that deal with Philadelphia. If you want to discuss why a building's falling down necessarily, you shouldn't have to wait until the legislative calendar puts that into effect to be able to speak on it. If
Mhm.
that's the only place we have for the public comment,
Mhm.
I um, I think a lot of people on council who do not share the opinion think it is the most wasteful period of the meeting, and they see it as a time to have a bathroom break or to go get lunch or to this,
Really?
that, and the other. So there's two different factors, and you can see quite often who gets up and goes. There are some people, and I will say this: there are some people who are doing many jobs who need to go and take constituents out to have a group photograph and come right back in. That's their only chance during the meeting to do that. There are some people who are running. Entire organizations, right? Running entire parties who sometimes have to go to another state to do something on a national level. They will come out during public comment. But for some, it's a time in which they can just say whatever. There are some people who I think need to leave during public comment because they're unable to control themselves when the public speaks to them and they start
Mm.
yelling and cussing and screaming back. So there are.
That happened?
Oh, that has happened more than once. And I will say this: when the public comes to you to speak, your job is to listen. I don't care if you don't like what they have to say. I don't care if they're ridiculous. As long as they hold decorum in the room, right there, the public is not using defamatory language. The public
Mhm.
is sticking to the rules, if you will. Then your job is to listen and to swallow it
Mhm.
and to get over yourself and your pride. You have a time to answer. It's 7 days a week and twice on Sunday when you're making law. It
Mhm.
is when you are in the room creating legislation, bills, and resolutions. That is when you have the time to respond to the needs of the public. It's not in public comment for you to pick up your microphone and scream at people. So I
Mhm.
have had those conversations too.
Yeah. People are commenting here about all of this. I saw it a few times, and I don't go to city council often, but I saw it a few times. Just got up and left and never came back. It's one thing to get up and leave, but seems so disinterested. And the public that voted you in office, which tells you that they just really don't care what the people think about them because they just know. Because even when they have challengers to them for elections, they find ways to get rid of their challengers. That's been a huge problem. That's been a huge problem, right? In these elections. So they get in, they know they have a group of people that will work on their behalf. They have lawyers, et cetera, to challenge the petitions. Next thing you know, so and so is gone. Or they pick up the phone and call them and say, if you challenge me, this, and this is going to be happening. You will never get X, Y, and Z. And I'm not talking like this is some fantastical thing that doesn't happen and this is a dream that I have. I'm talking about things that have happened as seriously. Judges running for
Yeah.
office who told that they would not get in because they didn't give X amount of monies to this one and that one. It's a
Yeah, the home
machine.
rule charter, the home rule charter designed to run was built just because of this issue. And so one of the reasons why I was such a staunch proponent to make sure that resign to run remained in the language was because we are badly behaved as a history, as a record of note. It's funny because when I looked at my legislative record, you can do this when you speak in public comment. You can type in the bills, you can type your name and look up all the things you've spoken on. There are many pieces of legislation that I have tracked to what actually happened to the legislation. And so I have learned that it is effective. That when you come to make a speech about X, Y, and Z, that even for instance with this home rule charter change, I spoke against it vehemently 3 times. The first time it was voted through, I spoke against it again. It was then withdrawn. The
Mhm.
fourth time I spoke again, or the third time I spoke against it, they had recalled the entire bill. It is
And
no
they
longer to
needed
be on
to.
the
How
ballot.
dare you
They
sit in
needed
office
to.
talking about you want to run for another office and still hold on? And there were people arguing for
But
this.
that's right. Until people came and said, not today, when people have no job security, when
Right.
people are unable to figure out how they're going to eat today, will they be voting for you? And a shame on you for the to vote for you to be able to stay. Now I understand that there were people who said we can't afford to run another race and not have a job. That is part of politics. And it's a
But you
shame.
quit
It
this
is it's
one and find another part time because people have done it plenty of
but
times.
even more aptly to the point is the fact that when you were in the chair, suddenly the lobbyists come to your office and say, we'll make sure that you get in a second time because we need you to vote on these things. And that's what we can't have. Even more aptly is when you're in the chair, you can use the photocopy machine to make sure that you get your stuff out. You can use your office staff to continue running
Even though it's
all of
illegal for
this.
you to do that, you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be
Who
separate.
is how do you police that, right? So this was something that had to, and it did. The voice of the people was heard. Another time the voice of the people was heard with the stadium, right? It was people, and they were voting towards the stadium. It was people who said this is not acceptable. We will not have this. We are vehemently against this. And not only did Comcast and Spectre and the 76ers look at that deal and say this is a bad deal and play with the politics of the people who were sitting not only in council but also with the mayor's office, but they also heard the public pressure of the Chinese community who said we will cut off all ties with you and take our money elsewhere. And people who came to the floor and spoke on the record mattered. So I think that people need to come and speak on the record. It is a matter of policies and decisions. And I do think that people in city council need to take those conversations seriously and sit their butts in the chair. Lastly, I will say we spend much too much time in legislative meetings celebrating people. I'm all about celebrating people. It needs to be a different day. This is celebration day. We've come to celebrate you, celebrate you, celebrate. Those celebrations can go on for an hour, sometimes more for whoever else it is, and they deserve that time to be celebrated on the floor and get their resolutions in X, Y, and Z. That should not stop or impede the time in which the public is able to respond to the problems of the city or to the joys of the city through comment. And what happens now is if we have celebrations and we have more than 50 people to sign up, you now have 1 minute to speak. Now, what can you say in a minute?
Right.
I'm seasoned at saying things. What I say in a minute is sometimes miraculous to me. But when people are nervous about their real truths
It
and
takes
they
them a
come to the
minute to
mic
even get to the part
to
where
say
they
my
can
name
say,
is, yeah, and then it beep beep, the microphone will be removed. Next person. It's just it's alling.
mhm,
So I think that we need to set a time that are appropriate. My fear is that if you remove public comment from the meeting, and I think it should be removed from the meeting and put before it, because I don't know
mhm,
how you digest the public comment in order to make an informed vote when you vote
mhm,
immediately after the public comment. That always seems odd to me, right? There should be a time
right.
to think about what the public had to say. But even still, I think if you move the public comment, you have to make it mandatory. And I
Yes.
think that's the problem is you can move the public comment, and then if no one shows up to hear the public comment, that's even worse.
Yeah. 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 Wow. So, leaving local politics, let's talk about this. In a 6-3 decision, and this was written by MSN.com, in a 6-3 decision Wednesday, the Supreme Court struck down Louisiana's second majority black congressional district, ruling it an unconstitutional gerrymander. The ruling has significant implications for future applications of the Voting Rights Act, VRA, which activists have long used to push for new electoral lines that protect the voting power of historically disenfranchised voting groups, including Black voters. The NAACP called the High Court's ruling a devastating blow to the landmark civil rights legislation. President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law on August 6, 1965, during a time of immense advocacy from activists within the civil rights movement to ensure fair voting practices at the ballot box. That was 1965. The law opened the door for thousands of voters to go to the polls during a time when Black voters faced significant barriers to voting, including poll taxes, literacy tests, and voter intimidation and harassment. The 1965 law outlawed literacy tests and required Southern states with a history of voter discrimination to obtain federal approval before making changes to their voting laws. The second section of the act has been used to justify redistricting efforts aimed at protecting the voting power of minority groups. The provision specifically outlaws any voting practice that creates hurdles on account of race or color. The Justice Department includes a protection against discriminatory practices based on membership in a large minority group in its description of the act. While the Supreme Court's Wednesday ruling does not completely eliminate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, Justice Elena Kagan wrote in her dissent that it leaves the provision all but a dead letter. The Reverend Al Sharpton, a civil rights icon and president of the National Action Network, called the High Court's decision a bullet in the heart of the voting rights movement. What say
Mhm.
you, David? Because People have been so disenfranchised for so
Yeah.
long. Many of these politicians actually use that as a way to win elections because people are so disgusted. They don't encourage them to come out. Now it's becoming more difficult. You have to have a
I would
passport to vote.
I
Your
would say
marriage
that
thing.
we were told that this was on their chopping list in that manifesto that was put out by MAGA, and Project 2025, which spoke to what they were going to do. This is two-thirds of the way done. There's still more in that manifesto. I would also say, however, that sometimes we are unaware of the effects that we have across the
Mhm.
nation. I'm interested in seeing the modules, which I've seen a few of, that say that this may backfire for them, because in allowing Louisiana to make such rules, you also allow California, and you allow New York, and you allow other states which have historically been blue, even states which are purple, to be able to redraw maps and rules which could effectively wipe out Republican votes across states.
But
So
Virginia did something similar to give more access, and a
blocked
judge
down.
blocked it.
He blocked
Blocked it.
it. But I
He
think that
said, nope, you're taking away." And it's a judge appointed by President Donald Trump. He has been.
I think now this Supreme Court ruling will allow that to be reviewed. So I think that that Virginia case came out the day before, didn't it? If I'm correct, and my brain isn't exactly there, but I think it came out the day before the Supreme Court ruling, and so that decision, could be recalled, and they may have to now say, well, the Supreme Court has said this. They refiled the suit, and now Virginia decides it's redrawing.
Mhm.
And so I think it's a shame. It shows how racist we are as a country. I want us to be very clear about that. We always say, oh no, we're over it, we're this, any other. This really isn't about race, it's about something else. But the response that people have had to this,
Mhm.
particularly people who are Republican, MAGA supporting white people, has been so joyous that it's not been about the politics of it. It's not been about the framing of the law. It's been about those people will no longer be able to decide how I live. And I want us
Oh,
to hear what that actually is saying. I want
absolutely.
us to be very clear about what that means. So I think that it's showing us who we are. And I think that we have an option. How do we respond to that? What do we do
Mhm.
about that? Where are we going with that? Who are we?
Yeah.
And how do we now stand up more boldly? I think sometimes we pussyfoot around, if you will. And we have got to get to a place where we're willing to get up and go outside and demand what it is that we will and will not have. I am reminded of a political speech in which someone was very upset that the public might tell them how to run governance. And to that, I would say that in America, there was a war, and that war was fought over the idea that it was the job of the public to demand how the government would respond to it, and not the other way around. And anyone who does not understand that very basic, rudimentary civic tenet perhaps is in the wrong job. Here in this United States of America, it is the job of the public, it is the job of the citizens, it is the job of the corporations and the people with inside of it to come together and then to tell the government what it needs and what it requires and how it will run.
Yeah, ECB ST6 says, yeah, MAGA thinks racism doesn't exist since civil rights passed like magic. They watched, and I kept saying, black folk, they watched us. The blue-blooded among us. Good morning, Eloise. The blue-blooded, wealthy black people among us uh, present simply. They live simple lives. They drive little cars. They've got all kinds of money, but you just would never know because they kept it to themselves in their little enclaves. The up and coming who consider themselves blue blooded, that are a part of what they consider elite institutions, have been all over social media showing
Wow,
all the
wow,
things. And
wow.
black and white folk got angry and angry in the Project 2025 when I began talking about it in 2019. I just want folks to know, folks that I don't know what you're talking about. It's some pie in the sky. It can never happen. Blah 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 blah. There was a whole section on us black folks. They knew they were going to take away our jobs. They knew so many houses in foreclosure now. All the people who had been because we talked. If we have learned nothing, one of the things that I did this past week was visit Lake Lanier, where the whole black town was. uh poured water over the whole town for people to, and you should see them. They're having picnics and, just in the water, and there were a whole fire department team, doing diving in the water. The whole town is underneath, and I'm thinking to myself, do you all forget? Do you all forget that as far as we thought we have come, we still
I
haven't gotten but so far?
I don't know how many people know that I think it's most of the man-made lakes in North America are created out of African American communities. I want you to hear that. The amount of man-made lakes in North America, which are the result of the flooding and sinking of Black communities of wealth, where we now go to picnic.
And so we continue to have this dialogue around how much money we're making and where do we live, and not recognizing that they're watching us. So how they get to us is through our employment. They find ways to sabotage. They find ways to do all sorts of things. And so the simpler you live, the better, y'all. I keep
And
telling you this.
I need I have it's it
I know, David,
I
because this
came
is,
from one of those simple minded peoples. Not simple minded, but
I know, but living
I came
simply so as
I
not to
came from one
draw
of those people
attention. Yes,
who chose when they displayed and when they did not,
yes.
and was raised with those rules of less is more and this and the
So
other. But it
they're
does.
probably looking at you in horror.
Every day I get up and breathe. Oh, there's a problem. Why would you show your face? Could you just shut up? Could you sit down? Really, every picture's worth 1,000 words and you have 10. So what do we do? Oh, they're mortified often. Um, but I made a conscious choice because I realized that we were being erased. The idea that we existed was being erased. And so I chose to live slightly more out loud. Now, I still find it incredibly gauche when people walk around in 18 different designer labels and don't have a sandwich to eat. I still, there are parts of their lessons which do exist in me. When I see white tie being done incorrectly, it bothers me most muchly. But but I will say that I think it's unfair often and sad, because I do think that people should be able to live as they do. When the robber barons were building great mansions and were living out loud, this wasn't an issue. And while they did receive pushback from their own community in times, and much of the Gilded Age was gilded and not gold, I think still there was this understanding of what society meant. I think part of it was the civic and cultural leadership of the mass, and I think that part of this is that those who are coming along don't understand or have reverence for the history of whence they came. And so they arrive today thinking, well, I'm going to do a new thing without any retrospect of how they got there. And therefore, they don't fortify themselves. They don't build the walls around their castles. And so I grew up in a room which built walls around the castle. And perhaps I'm a bit of a rogue. I'm a bit of the black sheep, if you will, who's gone out and will say and do. But I still come home for Ascot. And I still show up and make sure my butt's in the chair. So I think that we have to be. I think there's a yes and here. I think there is a reality that we do have to recognize why people have become so upset, which is that because African Americans, brown people in truth, have become much more visible, palpably wealthy. And the truth is, and I've discussed this before, that Black people have outpaced Caucasian people in building wealth. So for every percentage of millionaires created within Caucasian communities, the actual numbers suggest that more millionaires by percentage have been created within the African American diaspora.
Mhm.
This is a
So
problem for
so
people.
so our current Tulsa, Oklahoma is the loss of all these jobs, the desecration of
That's
all these jobs. So that
no, that's our current Jim Crow era. That's our current. The here Tulsa hasn't come yet. Wait till they get up to Oak Bluff and sink it. Wait till they come to Mount Airy and sink it. Wait till they come to, you name the place, Chestnut
Mhm,
Hill, which has become in many ways a
mhm,
thriving African Americans are moving into Chestnut Hill, and wait till they
mhm,
sink something, or they decide
mhm,
there's a whole thing that comes. So I don't want you to believe that this is the sinking. No, no, this is reconstructionist portions of society now being torn down, right? And so
but
this
we're
is the
still
pattern.
in this place of let's just go ahead and display. And the more we display, because we are in this place where we think we have arrived as Black people. We've arrived. So what's wrong with showing up and showing our children accomplishing and showing this and showing that and showing that?
Well,
There
there's
is
nothing
still
wrong if you fortify it.
nothing's wrong with it.
You
We're not
have to
gonna
build the walls around the
afford it
castle
right.
first. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there are folks watching who are just angry, and they're going to be angry, and they're usually the ones that are in the places of power, immense
Yeah.
power. Chris Rabb is here, so I've got to let him in. So I'm going to say
Yes.
goodbye to you, but let me say this: we have to have a discussion about who rules what in the world, because even the president of the United States, as much as we think of the power that person carry, they're people pulling their strings about what they can do and how they can do it.
I will leave you with this. Whilst we live in the United States of America and are seeing the reaction of what it means to be a powerful, uplifted, whatever group of showy people and how the tables can be flipped when people get angry, I want us to remember that the only place in the world where population is growing is in Africa. And to that I say, good night.
Good night, my darling. I'll see you next week. I'll see you next week. Bye bye. Okay. And here you go. Rep. Chris Rabb is a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, serving Philadelphia's 200th district since 2017. He's currently running in the 2026 Democratic primary for Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. Born in Chicago and educated at Yale University at the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Pennsylvania, he's also a professor and author focused on economic equality. Lord have mercy. Are you ready, sir? Good morning.
Good morning.
The people are ready. We have been waiting to have this conversation with you. So I have a few questions for you. I have questions from folks who gave me some questions, and then I'm telling the audience, the listen audience, that they can do questions themselves. Thank you for joining us. It's important that we have this conversation. You have been a state rep for several years. Why this office of congressman? And what do you bring to the table that makes you qualified? I'm asking you this because this is our first time talking, and I want to go from the rooter to the tutor with you. So, what makes you qualified? Why this office? Why have you decided to now run for this office?
Well, I'm starting my 10th year in office in the largest state legislature in the nation, the largest full-time state legislature in the nation. So, if there's any relevant experience to serve in the highest legislative body in the nation, it is having served in the largest full-time state legislature. So, many, if not most, members of Congress have no legislative background whatsoever. And I have a stalwart legislative track record over the decade I've served. I've introduced over 100 bills and resolutions. I'm a strong public advocate for issues of the day as it relates to the state that are highly relevant to our nation. And right now, in these adverse times, these are troubled times, and I believe we need a troublemaker to represent the bluest congressional district in the entire nation. The 3rd Congressional District, it is the first time in 35 years that there will be no incumbent on the ballot because our Congressman Dwight Evans is retiring at the end of this year. And what that means is for those folks who may not have the support of the establishment or other folks, it levels the playing field so that people who are competent may actually have a real chance of becoming a member of Congress. You know, there's a lot of qualified people who could run, but it's really hard to beat an incumbent. So with a open seat, there's a chance to bring new leadership and new vision to represent the 3rd Congressional District. And I believe I represent that new vision.
Thank you. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you were raised.
Mm. Well, I was raised by troublemakers. I come from a semi-nomadic Negro people. My father was born in Jim Crow, Kentucky, in the Great Depression, to two Fiskites. They met at Fisk in the 20s, um, and my his father was from Mississippi. He had to leave Mississippi for fear of being lynched. Um, his mother, my grandmother, was from Louisville, Kentucky, um, from a very modest family that believed in education. She was one of seven, and she became a school teacher. She taught Muhammad Ali. She was the treasurer for the NAACP. They helped found the Kentucky branch of the ACLU and worked as civil rights activists when she wasn't a school teacher. My mother was from Baltimore, seven generations in Baltimore. She worked for Harold Washington um, as the executive director for the Office of Fine Arts um, in the city of Chicago. So she was responsible for elevating Black artists and other marginalized folks across the great city of Chicago. And my father um, was a physician. He desegregated the University of Louisville and the University of Louisville Med School um, in the 1950s, thanks to Thurgood Marshall, right before the Brown versus Board um, of Education decision. Thurgood Marshall won a case called the McLaren case that desegregated higher education, and my father was allowed to go and apply to University of Louisville when um, it was illegal since 1904 because there was a Democratic state representative named Representative Day who enacted a law that said Black folk cannot study with, go to school with white folk. And he was the first beneficiary of desegregated education. Um, so my four grandparents were civil rights activists. My parents were guinea pigs of the civil rights movement. They had to be perfect, and that put a lot of pressure on me and my brothers, you might
Mhm.
imagine.
Mhm.
Um, but also my grandparents' grandparents, and I'm a genealogist and family historian.
Mhm.
They were all Black folk who were born across 6 states where slavery was the state law, from as far south as Mississippi to as far north as Manhattan. And they were abolitionists. And one of their parents was Reverend Amos Noah Freeman from Rahway, New Jersey, who worked with Black and white abolitionists in
Mhm.
Philadelphia in the 1830s and 40s. And recently, thanks to the amazing folks at 1838 Black Metropolis, an amazing nonprofit volunteer led organization here in Philly of young Black folk, they helped me find the very building where my great, great, great grandfather conspired around racial justice on 7th and Lombard. The building was called Benezet Hall, and it was burned to the ground by an angry white mob. But Black folk built it back up,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's where they conspired to do extraordinary work around mutual aid and defending their neighbors and creating amidst the darkest moments, that's where the brightest light shone. And
Mhm.
that is our tradition. That is what is my North Star. That is what allows me to serve in very troubled times. And I
Mhm.
believe that is the type of fight and orientation around
Mhm.
collective action and community that we need to represent us in the halls of power in Washington, D.C.
What you just described spoke to me in particular about who you are, because I didn't know, which is why I was asking you, right? Who are you that creates the space where you walk in a room and you don't give a good god diggity dang. I'm not cussing. Uh, about what people think you should do, how you should be, and it's created this tension among folks who follows the old guard, if you will, around the correct way to approach politics. It's just Andrea talking. Okay, so I have a couple of other questions, and I'm going to ask you some more. Just hang with me. But thank you for that. What's one issue you think Congress isn't tackling boldly enough right now, and how would you approach it differently?
I'm going to say two things. Um, One is reparations. And the way we've talked about reparations is focused on the grievances of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wrong way to look at reparations. Reparations is about reparative justice. It's about repair, but
Mhm.
it ain't about repairing black folk. True reparations is about repairing society itself, because this is a nation born on stolen land and stolen labor.
Mhm.
And all the wealth, all the status that has accrued over generations and centuries in this nation, the richest nation in world history, is connected to the exploitation of black folk and our genius, our treasure, our labor. And there is no program that has ever existed or has ever been meaningfully talked about that can level the playing field, that would allow black folk to have a fighting chance at equality.
Mhm.
Nothing, nothing. And so what that means is, when you take care of, when you honor, when you atone for the sins against the systems of harm that have consistently and purposely been anti-black, you help everyone, most notably black women.
Mhm.
No one understands the depth
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
expanse of exploitation of labor
Mhm.
than black women.
Mhm.
No one. And one of the first things that Trump did when he got back in office was he fired 300,000 black women
Mhm.
in an
Mhm.
instant.
Mhm.
So if you take care of black women, and not in a rhetorical way, but you take care of black women in terms of policy, you help literally everyone. So reparations is something that every American should embrace, because their fates will be influenced positively. This is not about taxing white people or getting white people to open up their wallets and give to the black person closest to them. That's not what it's about.
Mhm.
This is structural. And when you do that,
Mhm.
we are beginning to fulfill the promise of greatness of this nation. Until then, it's all talk.
What do you say to folks who, this is a follow up question, that this is pie in the sky, that we've been talking about reparations forever? It's not going to happen. Why don't we just move on? What do you say to folks who would say that to you?
Well, talk is cheap, right? You say we've been talking about a lot of things for a long time, but
Mhm.
where has the substance uh, been addressed? Where's the
Mhm.
rubber hit the road? Where's the legislation that addresses this? When has that become a priority um,
Mhm.
in the 21st century, 20th century, 19th century? Like, let's be real. Like,
Mhm.
sure, we talk about a lot of things,
Mhm.
but somehow people want to believe that because the number is so staggering in terms of what we are owed,
Mhm.
that they cannot possibly imagine how we could do something without bankrupting the nation. And yet, we are sending billions of dollars every day to drop bombs on civilians in a country that has done us no harm. We have the capacity to fund whatever we want. We don't have the political will. So somehow we can come up with a $200 billion for a war that not even most conservatives want. But we don't have the money for reparations. And let's be clear, when we're talking about reparations, we're talking about all the things that can dissolve the racial disparities that don't just hold black folk down, it holds our nation down.
Yeah.
Think about education. We're talking about closing 17 schools in Philadelphia, right? Not because we don't have enough students to fill the school buildings or enough teachers to teach, but because we don't have the political will to fully fund public education, which disproportionately benefits black folk.
Mhm.
Or healthcare. I support the Medicare for All bill,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
seems radical, but in other nations, it is the norm. Or a federal job guarantee, which is very
Mhm.
similar to the status of so many black women who have jobs working for the government, doing meaningful work
Mhm.
um, at a sustainable wage, expanding that, which is what we did in the 1930s during the New Deal.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
all of these things are bold, but some of them have been already done. But
Mhm.
oftentimes when things are done, they leave folks out. So the minimum wage, and I have the boldest minimum wage bill in the country. In 1938, when we created the minimum wage, it excluded domestic workers, Black women. It
Mhm.
excluded agricultural workers, right, which was a whole swath of people,
Mhm.
overwhelmingly people of color. It excluded disabled workers. So now, when we have the ability to learn from what worked in the past, we need to
Mhm.
make sure that we bring everyone up with us and don't leave anyone behind. That's what I believe. That's possible. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, which is highly related to you, is media democracy.
Mhm.
We live in a nation now where essentially five tech bros determine 95% of what we consume.
Mhm.
We don't have a reliable and inclusive narrative on the things that weigh on people the most,
Mhm.
because who decides what's popular? Who decides what's news? Who decides who has access to this information? And in a nation that is supposed to be about freedom of speech, and competition and free market, I mean, most
Mhm.
of that is,
Yeah.
fictitious, of course. We do not have that choice. And so what we need to do is we need to break up these massive corporations
Mhm.
that are controlled by individuals or individual families, so that we have a diversity of thought and expression and
Mhm.
content, because that's going to allow us to lift up all the other issues we care about, whether it's the
Mhm.
environment or women's rights or education or immigration
Mhm.
reform or what have
Mhm.
you. We can't have any of those conversations in good faith if the people controlling the narratives are five tech bros. And so
Absolutely.
that's something we can do. And the reason I know we can do it is because Bill Clinton did the exact opposite. When we were supposed to have a strong Democratic president, he made sure it was easier for media corporations to concentrate their power and not
Mhm.
diffuse it. That hurt Black folk, that hurt women, that hurt people of color, and that is unacceptable. So there's legislation I would work on to make sure that there are more folks like you, independent media makers, to have a voice and a fighting chance to have a reach that you deserve. We
Mhm.
should never have it consolidated amongst just a handful
Mhm.
of folks. And all of those folks are men.
Yeah, and many of us now, Joy Reid, Joyanne Reid, myself, many of us are in where are we? YouTube. You know, we have decided that we didn't want our voices nullified by folks, even by the folks running these stations that tell us what we can and cannot say. It was disconcerting and it was disingenuous to say the least, but that's another story for another day. Lynette Hill says, "Good morning, Rep Rab. Reports say you cast the only no vote on a PA House package on child sex trafficking. Given the seriousness, can you explain your rationale?"
Oh, absolutely. This is why we need to have independent thinkers who are nerds, who
Mhm.
understand policy,
Mhm.
to understand why sometimes you have to vote no on something that seems like a really good thing. Now, why
Mhm.
would you vote against a bill that goes against trafficking? Well, who defines the terms, and and who is ensnared in an overly broad um, definition? This happens quite a bit on the Judiciary Committee, which I've served on for a
Mhm.
number of years. So, if a prosecutor says that a dispute between two parents who don't live together um, is human trafficking, but it's actually a misdemeanor offense because there's a financial transaction that occurs that may not be legal, but may be consensual. It's not one parent or one adult
Mhm.
stealing a child and selling them.
Right.
It is a dispute between poor parents who are making difficult decisions in very difficult times. And most of those folks who are poor, disproportionately Black and brown. There's a reason there's already a statute on the books to address it. But to sweep all interactions between parents under the title of human trafficker is highly inappropriate and dangerous. And
See,
I'll give you.
If I'm
Yes,
hearing you correctly, what you're saying is the way they've written this would ensnare the people who least deserve to be a part of being called a human trafficker, which would then shift
exactly.
and change their life. Is that what you're saying to me?
Exactly, exactly. So I'll give you another example in case that wasn't strong enough. Because listen, I descend from human traffickers. Like I am the number of rapists in my family through the enslavers who enslaved my other ancestors is significant. So I do not have any soft spot for actual human traffickers.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are families, if there are co-parents who are struggling to work things out and they make bad decisions with limited resources and information, those people don't deserve to be put into cages and further penalized. We have enough penalties against folks, particularly poor people. What we need is wraparound services to help them make better decisions because they should not be considered criminals. They should be considered folks who are, in fact, themselves victims of systems that harm them, that put them in a position to make bad decisions. Now you have other folks like, folks in the Epstein class, folks who are complicit in the sale of children and young women and boys for profit and pleasure. Those folks are despicable. But under this proposed legislation, they're all the same. Let me give you another example because I think this is really important. There's something called a sex offender registry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm a proud father of two sons who are away in college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was a young father, there was an app that allowed me to see who are all the people who are registered sex offenders, because I wanted to know if any of my neighbors, anyone close to me, were around, because I'm a very protective father. I downloaded the app and it turned out I was surrounded by them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was long before I took office. After I took office and years later, when I joined the Judiciary Committee, I realized that the majority of people who are on the sex offender registry have never committed a sexual offense.
How
Were
did
you
they end up
aware of
there?
that?
No, I was not.
It's
How did they end up there?
because if you were out partying and such, right? And you're in high school, you're about to graduate from high school, right? And you're out with your friends and stuff. And um, you have to go to the bathroom, but you're out late and there's nowhere to go. And you see a bunch of bushes.
Stop
So
it.
you go there, right? Privately in this public space, a park or whatever. It's late. It's not like broad daylight. And you think, no one's around. You're not trying to expose yourself, but you get caught. The police catch you. That's public indecency. Just going to the bathroom. That is a law, a vague law that
Mm-hmm.
a police officer who has no empathy can say, you publicly exposed yourself. And guess what?
You end
If
up
you
on the
don't have
sex
a good
offenders list.
lawyer, if you don't have a good lawyer, you are now on the sex offenders registry. Now, think about all the people who are making a difficult decision, like you have to go to the bathroom, right? You make that choice. You don't want to do that, but you got to do it. And see, we have people showing up.
Yes.
This happens.
Yes.
Who are the people who are going to be policed, right? Because if you're a upstanding upper middle class white kid whose parents know folks and in the Rotary Club and such, and Officer Friendly, do you think Officer Friendly is going to arrest you? No,
No.
but we know how policing and the law works. So the people who are on that list are overwhelmingly people who do not have good lawyers, who are probably poor, who are on the margins, but they've never committed a sexual crime. So when we say, oh, we need to put all these folks in cages and so forth, that is political grandstanding. That does not keep people safe. And when we talk about where is our taxpayer dollars going, the third largest expense that we pay as Pennsylvanians is putting people in cages many of whom are not allowed to ever leave that cage for the rest of their life, including over 500 Black men who came in as Black boys until our state Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. And that was in 2015. But fast forward to just a couple months ago, the state Supreme Court said it is not constitutional to lock people up in cages for the rest of their lives without the chance of parole for those folks who committed second-degree murder, which means that they were at the murder scene or involved with the person who
But did
killed
not
someone,
do the
even
killing
though they did not plan the murder, they did not touch the murder weapon, they were not involved in a violent act. And we have the second largest population of folks in cages in the entire country here in Pennsylvania, many of whom I know because I've worked on this issue. And these are folks, the only reason they're in a cage is because they're poor Black men. It's the only reason. And if they were in any other and they're overwhelmingly poor Black men, some of whom have mental health issues, addiction issues, and we have to make a choice with our taxpayer dollars and who we send to Harrisburg and who we send to Washington, D.C. about what is responsible policymaking to address the underlying issues. And putting more people in prison for people who are not actually creating harm is not the way. And I get in trouble for that because I make difficult votes, because on the surface it says Representative Rabb supports human traffickers. But that I have the moral clarity to make the right decision, even though I was the only one. Think about that. I was the only one who voted no.
Yeah.
And that to me is a sign of integrity, because I understand that I'm going to be beaten up and my opponents in this race. Like, if there was any time for me to pander and just go along and to get along, it's now 2 weeks before my election. But as soon as I give up my integrity, I have no business winning.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Laverne says, I appreciate your explaining this. The small writing is never shared when it comes to what we want and vote for. And Laverne, I have to say this to you. When we see these things being posted, we don't ask the questions behind the questions. We just get emotional about it and say, see, shouldn't do X, Y, Z. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. State Rep, I had some folks coming from Washington, D.C., late 2016, 2017, come to my house and they say, we want you to run for this, 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 and this, and this. And I looked at them and I said, hell to the no, no, no. Because of this kind of stuff, people dig into your background. They use things that you say and do that meant no harm to try and destroy you. So I see this is, I think you all are so brave actually trying to do this. Laverne also said, so if I have been stuck in traffic and had to choose between pissing my pants in the car or pulling over and going outside, that bill meant I could get on that list? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It absolutely means that.
If someone to see you, a police officer were able to see you do that, that would be public indecency.
Yeah.
And there's so many basic offenses, like resisting arrest or disorderly conduct. If I read to you the definition of, a lot of people have heard the expression disorderly conduct, it's a criminal offense. It is laughable how vague and problematic it is, because that it gives a police officer to arrest anyone for any reason. We shouldn't even have that, but people don't know. And this is why I support strong Black independent media, because you can dig down. When I'm on corporate media, they don't allow me this time to talk. And just recently, I should mention, after the debate I participated in at WHYY, after I was surrounded by a bunch of white journalists. And they said, we understand you're going on this controversial show with this person, Hassan Piker. And how do you justify that? And I said, well, that's interesting, because I don't know if any of you question Pete Buttigieg for keep going to Fox News, which is an inherently racist media outlet. I didn't hear anyone say Bernie Sanders shouldn't talk to Joe Rogan, who has deeply problematic, opinions. So when I'm trying to reach Gen Z, a bunch of voters who rarely come out, who don't see themselves in campaigns, and they all follow him, why wouldn't I go on his show if I want to reach folks who I need to reach? Because I want to reach everyone across the electorate. They were silent. And then I said to the woman, Lauren Make, who's anchor at NBC 10.
NBC.
I said, I've been on your show, but NBC used to be owned by one of the largest defense contractors, General Electric,
Mhm.
in the world. Should I not
Mhm.
come back on your show?
Yeah.
And they didn't have anything to say. There's a double standard for Black folk who speak unapologetically against
Mhm.
injustice. And I'm not going to let them clown me. I'm not going to let them do all those
Mhm.
things. It's not appropriate.
Well, well, well. Let's just keep asking the questions because you're answering them before I even ask them. This is great. Philadelphia voters care deeply about economic opportunity. What specific policies would you push to address inequality and support working families in the district? And may I add to this, sir, if I may? You have been a part of the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party has not been a part of you. I've seen it. You have They have put people to run up against you. They have put all sorts of things out there saying that you're this, that, and everything else. But you have not lost. You have yet to lose an election.
I'm not, and
This is
I'm
this
not
is
going to
this is
lose.
this is this is not conjecture. This is my doing my homework. I have heard them having the conversations. What is it about you that rubs them the wrong way? And how would you support people who are really seeking? Because Philadelphia is filled with a lot of politicians who say, we can't do this, we can't do that. And yet here you are having a different conversation. Talk to me about that, please.
Well, I mean, first, let's acknowledge that you are choosing to have a substantive conversation
I
about the
am.
issues with me. This is not about gotchas. Oh, I saw you
Mhm,
do this, you did this,
mhm,
pulling stuff out of context. We're just two people having a conversation.
mhm,
And if there were more people willing to do this in between election cycles,
mhm,
right, and not just 2 weeks before a major election, a lot of this could be resolved because there's so many things that are said about me, but so few things said to me. So I'm finding out all kinds of things that people say about me without actually having the conversation.
mhm,
I am prepared to
mhm,
have a conversation with anyone. And so when
mhm.
I name check Bob Brady, the chair
Mhm,
of the Philadelphia Democratic City Committee,
mhm,
um, I don't need to go to Twitter to do it. I can just say it to his face,
mhm,
and I have. I used to be a ward leader. Like, so I'm not someone out from the outside saying, well, y'all need to do is this, y'all need to do that. I did it myself. I was a committee person for 18 years. I was at the polls twice a year. Every time there was an election, I was there helping inform my neighbors long before I took public office.
mhm,
But I'm going to hold folks to account because that's my job. And just like I'm held to account, I have 70,000 bosses in a majority Black mixed income district representing 4 neighborhoods in Northwest Philly for a decade. I'm often held to account. That's my job too, because I'm a public servant. And people know that they can hold me to account,
mhm,
not moneyed interests, because the people who elect me and the people who give to my campaigns are pretty much the same people. I do not accept corporate PAC money. I've never accepted it in the 10 years I've been in office because I'm independent. And let's be honest, no, most white folk do not want independent Black thinkers. It's scary. It is why reading and writing was so dangerous,
mhm,
right? That they outlawed it. And in fact, they punished white people. You could be flogged publicly as a white person for teaching a Black person how to read and write. So if you're a Black person who knows, who has self-worth, who knows who they are, and is unapologetic about our level of knowledge, we are, what are we called? We're called arrogant, right? We're
yeah.
called sedity. We're called
Rabble
chest,
rouser, rather. Mhm,
rabble rouser. Well, I'm a
mhm,
rabble rouser. I
mhm,
don't play small.
mhm,
My ancestors didn't work and sacrifice this hard so I could play small around white power structures and the Black folk who lift up those white power structures
mhm,
because they're complicit. I got a lot of folks whispering, "Oh, you doing the thing?" And I said, "Well, why don't you do it with me?" Well,
mhm,
it's kind of different. No,
mhm,
we
mhm,
need more people to speak up, and
mhm,
if we don't, we know the outcome. And look, every time we advance as Black folk, it's because we save us. We weren't waiting for anyone to do it. We gathered together. We organized through collective action and collective genius to do what we need to do to get through it. No one ever gave us anything. We did it for ourselves, and that's going to be the future for us going forward, and not just Black folk, but anyone
Mhm.
who I call a member of a community of struggle.
Mhm.
Right? Because there are people of color who may not see themselves as a community of struggle. There,
Mhm.
there are folks who are of color, and I'm not just talking about like a Clarence Thomas. I'm talking about recent immigrants of color who do not understand the racial system in this nation, who move towards whiteness.
Stop, stop. You are the first person that I have heard actually address this. Jesus be Mary, mother, and Joseph. You are the first person. And it's a conversation that I have been having for years. We just seem to feel like, all right, well, we don't understand the structure. How is it that I'm able to come here and do this, this, and this? And so we move towards the. I have Black friends from Jamaica who who are now voting the Republican Party because they're the lazy Black people. And I'm telling you, Chris, I'm digging in their asses. Do you hear what I'm telling you? If you check the history, if you know your history, if you know what you're talking about, don't just follow the soundbite. Stop it. Those Black people lived and died and suffered so your Black ass could come here. Forgive me, Lord, because now I'm cussing on my own show. Could come here and do what you're supposed to do to get ahead. And they'd use you to push against the structure here to make us feel like the Black folks just don't, they had the opportunities that you now currently have that they had to fight and bleed and die for and still don't have those opportunities.
That's right.
See, we were not supposed to go here this morning. But you're the first person that has actually addressed this.
We got to call it. We got to call it out, and not as a form of blame, but
Right.
as an
But
opportunity
learning
to
to
engage.
understand. Yes.
That's right. Listen, and then I also hear like a lot of white liberals, like at No King's Day and stuff, and they say this is a nation that immigrants made. I'm like, well, there are indigenous people here for 20,000 years before y'all showed up, and then there's people like me who are descendants of enslaved Africans who
Mhm.
are not immigrants. We were forced laborers. We did not
Mhm.
immigrate here,
Mhm.
and in fact, so much of the wealth was created. So many of the institutions were on the backs of Black folk, so do not leave us out. And I, every time I hear a white liberal or others just talk about immigrants being the
Mhm.
backbone of this nation,
Mhm.
I try not to lose it.
Mhm.
And I try to center myself and I say, let's expand this a bit. I do not
Mhm.
accept that. And I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they have voted for me before. You are
Mhm.
not going to erase our people and our legacy. That's not going to happen. And I understand that I may come off as too radical for some
Mhm.
people to be a
Mhm.
viable candidate for Congress, but I'm not backing off. This is, I'm walking in my purpose. Whatever happens on May 19th is going to happen, but I'm not changing that to dilute my message. In fact, I'm seeking to strengthen it and bring more people on board to let them know that boldness and resistance
Mhm.
and collective action are what we need most, particularly in the darkest times.
Yeah. Chris, may I call you Chris? Because yeah, I went from state rep to Chris. Now I feel like
Well,
now,
the
now
term
we're
of
sitting in the living
endearment,
room having the conversation,
the
right?
term of endearment that I have embraced over 10 years is Rep Rab. And one of the
Mhm.
beauties is when I am your next member of Congress, I will still be Rep Rab because
Mhm.
I'll be a U.S. representative
Okay.
and no longer a state rep. So, yes, everyone.
There is a conversation about progressives in this city. Let me hold on one second because I wrote this down. So you got me all over the place now. I'm trying to figure this out. Progressive is seen as a dirty word, that white folks have moved into the city of Philadelphia and that we're now the leftovers of Black people, and that you have embraced those white people who are pushing Black people out of the city of Philadelphia. And I'm starting to see little pictures of you with the white folks, pushing the folks out. What do you want to say to that conversation, that you're embracing the newly minted white progressives who are pushing out the Black folks in this city and that they are not supposed to be here, and this is why you are doing what you're doing and you don't belong in this office? Speak to me. We're going there.
I meet people where they are. There is room for all of us. I believe that there are folks who um, maybe new to Philadelphia. I was new to Philadelphia 24 years ago, and I integrated myself into a majority Black neighborhood here in Mount Airy with a rich history. And I poured all of it into this neighborhood and my family. I'm very proud of that. You know, there are many people who are not even from Philly, like Ed Rendell is from New York, and he is considered a Philly icon. Many others. We need to accept everyone where they are, but understand that we have responsibilities to make sure that by our presence, we are not displacing others. So there are folks who are coming here who may not ever be able to afford a house, may not even feel like they have enough economic stability to start a family. But the other thing is, am I not supposed to engage young white people? I've been representing with love a majority Black district where the voters are disproportionately women and folks my age, Gen X and older. And they always have a seat at the table because they always determine who represents us here in my legislative district. But I'm representing a far more diverse district. It is less Black. It is far younger. It has other ethnic diversity in there. And I'm going to show up where I'm invited. Listen, if I don't know folks are having something because I'm not invited because of the political vicissitudes that keep a brother like me out because they're connected to the establishment, I don't know what to say, right? Like, I show up, and I particularly show up when I'm invited. I show up when people say, I need you to help me walk my child to school because I'm afraid ICE is going to steal my child. I show up. I show up when farm workers in South Central Pennsylvania say, we need to access driver's license to get to the farms to grow food that feeds Philadelphians. I need you to show up and help us organize. I show up when folks are saying we should not be investing in this Israeli bonds with taxpayer dollars, and we want to make sure that the state troopers don't arrest us for expressing our First Amendment rights. I show up when the president's house was being exhibit was being pulled down by the Trump administration, and we were protesting saying this is not right. I show up. We got to show up for our neighbors, and sometimes our neighbors don't look like us. And I don't put one over the other. The fact that these young folks have a stronger social media presence may look like I'm just hanging around with white folk. But again, for 10 years, I've represented the 6th Blackest legislative district out of all 203. I don't have to prove my Blackness or my allegiance. I'm not doing that to anybody. I'm certainly not doing it to white folk. I am who I am, and I stand on it. And so I'm going to find common cause with as many people as possible because this is a diverse congressional district. It is not just focusing on the political wards that are most tied to the Democratic establishment. That's not my politics. I'm a grassroots campaigner. I go everywhere. And if you invite me, even if I know that y'all going to come at me, I'm still going to go because that's my job as a public servant. I'm not just going to sympathetic audiences, but if there is an overrepresentation of young white people on a given thing, well, am I not supposed to go? I represented Chestnut Hill for my first 6 years in office, which is aggressively wealthy and aggressively white. In fact, it's so white that sometimes I'd show up at an event in my own district and I would desegregate it just by showing up. Am I not supposed to do that? That's one of the neighborhoods I represented. So I'm going to do the thing. But when I show up, and it's about how I show up, do I somehow pander to the audience? Do I become less outspoken around issues about race or class? Quite the contrary. When I used to go to Chestnut Hill, I would talk about reparations because they didn't expect me to do so, but I wanted them to know that I'm not their Negro. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you know what I'm talking about, right? Because there's some people who will be like, oh, well, he went to Yale and Penn, he's light-skinned, he's not one of them, he's okay. And I don't do that. I don't do that. I'm nobody's pet Negro. That's not happening. I was raised better than that. And look, these types of conversations get me in trouble, but this is a form of good trouble because this is who I am. I don't need this job so badly where I got to dilute myself to get it. I can get another job.
Necessary, and I'm grateful. I am thankful that you are answering the questions as they are being asked. I never, I always ask you straightforwardly. So let me ask this question because earlier this year, you reported your own campaign treasurer to the FEC for unauthorized withdrawals totaling thousands of dollars. While you framed this as doing what was right over political expediency, the incident drew negative attention to you as to your choice of staff, as to the employee. Your treasurer has a prior history of financial misconduct. What do you want to say about that?
Well, it's very easy for folks to say that after the news articles came out, but she had a previous issues with an alias. What person who's applying for a job says, "Oh, here are my aliases I used to bilk people out of thousands of dollars"? No, she was able to get away with this because she used different names. And I was one of many people who got bilked. Serious, dedicated public servants, other professionals got caught. I wasn't the first, but I wanted to make sure that I was the last. I could have tried to bury it, but that wasn't right. So I went to the authorities. I fired her, right? But then I went to the authorities, and then I voluntarily shared it with folks, knowing that when I shared it, my campaign could have been over. For about 48 hours, we really thought that the campaign was over because people responded so negatively, not because of anything that I did wrong, but because it looked bad politically. It looked bad politically. Oh, this brother don't know how to, hire the right people. He doesn't know how to control money. And as a result, it looked like I wouldn't be able to raise any more money because the money that was stolen. But the people surrounding me, and I'm going to be honest, I'm just going to put a name on it. Black folk. When Black folk who were closest to me in my inner circle, so my loved ones and political allies, when I disclosed what happened and they saw how devastated I was, because let's remember, this isn't my money. This is money of hardworking people across the city and across the nation who believed in me and my candidacy in these troubled times. I felt I failed them by entrusting someone who betrayed me as a professional on my team. This person was vetted. This person was referred to me by a reputable law firm who had no issues with this person. And this person was able to bilk me like so many others. But here's the other thing. If other people don't speak up, those scammers can keep getting away with it. And I didn't feel like my campaign was more important than protecting the next round of victims. And I realized that I was taking a serious risk sharing it, but that's what character looks like. Listen, I told my sons, and I've told them this over a decade, that when I run, I have to run with integrity. As soon as you give that up, you've already lost. You've already lost. Can I tell you how many times I put up lawn signs? And I did this with my youngest son years ago. And I taught him how to put up lawn signs. We put them up along Ivy Hill Road between Stenton and Cheltenham Avenue. And he was so proud because we put up like 100 lawn signs. And we went away. This was a few years ago. And we came back around and we passed that street, that very long street. They were all gone or destroyed. And my son, he was like, I don't know, 12. He was devastated. He said, "Dad, what happened to the lawn signs?" And I said, my opponent stole them. And he said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, we're not doing the same thing to them because we're going to win the right way. They can put all the lawn signs they want. Lawn signs don't vote, people do. And we're going to reach the people." And listen, I'm going to get banged up and beaten up more and more in the next 2 weeks before office. They're going to be looking
I'm
all
glad you
kinds of
know.
stuff.
I am glad you know.
Rep Rab kicks puppies and drinks the blood of babies and all kinds of stuff, and let them do what they're going to do. I trust the people. I trust the people because the people trust me. And so why are they going to, if you hear all kinds of crazy stuff, you got to ask yourself, why are they bringing this up now? Right? Why are they bringing it up now? Like that, what's so interesting is because they know I'm doing well. They're seeing the momentum. They're seeing the young people coming out, right? And not just young white people. I have met a young man earlier in this campaign who came up to me. I was at a community event in South Philly around environmental justice. And he saw me. He goes, "Are you Rep Rab?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I just gave you $12 last week online." And I said, "Young man, how old are you?" And he said, "I'm 20. Let me tell you this. I have never had a 20-year-old give me money. I was so moved. There's
And the
something
fact that
happening.
you're able to engage them because they're so disgusted by the two-party system, that says something. I want to read something to you that David says. As a legislator, you have to be able to convince others. All I see is someone who doesn't possess that trait. What do you say to this comment? What do you say to that guy? He doesn't
Wait,
think
is
you
it about
possess the trait to convince
that
others.
I'm not able to convince people?
Mhm.
Well, that's someone who doesn't know my track record. So, bro, I don't know what to say. Like, I've enacted 5 bills into law in my first 6 years when I was a Black progressive Democrat from Philly. That's 4 strikes against me. Just recently, last year, I passed a bill unanimously around deed fraud, working with one of the most conservative Republicans in the House of Representatives. That is my track record. It's what I do. I am able, despite my fiery language, I'm able to meet people where they are with authenticity and care and not demonize people because they don't share all of my views. That's how I've been an effective lawmaker. I have any number of examples where I've worked closely. In fact, I just passed the bill to repeal the death penalty in the Judiciary Committee, which is one of the things that has bipartisan support if it comes up for a vote on the House floor. My co-prime sponsor for my bill to repeal the death penalty was with the most conservative Republican at the time in the House of Representatives. But if mainstream media does not record that, if establishment Dems refuse to give me my flowers and acknowledge what I've actually done, even if they disagree with everything else, how are you supposed to know? We need more shows like yours. We need more people to see and have conversations that cultivate meaningful exchanges to learn about who our public servants are, who candidates are in a substantive way. I don't have many opportunities like this. They're not doing this for me in corporate media. They're not covering these things as substantively as our conversation is going now in news articles. That's not happening. So, this is the opportunity. And for those folks who question whatever my track record, whatever, this is a great opportunity to do it. This is why I keep coming on all kinds of shows that are not connected by conventional
So media,
journalism.
I'm telling you, it makes a
Because
difference.
we don't have conversations like this.
And I tell folks all the time, people say, "Well, how many people?" I said, "Yo, every vote matters. People need to have the substantive conversations that we're not having because you got 2 minutes to answer this or 30 seconds to answer that." And on this show, we get you to a place where you can talk about who you are, what you're about, so people get to hear that. I have a question for you because, oh boy, hold on, let me
And
ask
this is
this
why I'm
one.
here.
Yeah, hold on. Someone says, ask him why the establishment is so against him. Do you scare them because they know they cannot stand up against you? This is a question that I got via text.
Yes. Listen, if the establishment were that powerful, I wouldn't still be in office. They came after me. Listen, in 2016, there was a special election because Sherelle Parker was my state rep. She left early to run for city council because Marion Tasco retired. So they had to have a special election. Well, in Pennsylvania, in order for a special election to happen, you have to have a Democratic nominee to be on the ballot. Who chooses the Democratic nominee? Well, the party does. It used to be all of the elected committee people in the wards in that legislative district, which was like 150 duly elected committee people. But Bob Brady changed the bylaws and said, no, we're removing the power of committee people. We're just letting the ward leaders choose. Well, when my district in 2016 at the time was just 3 wards. So you needed a simple majority of 2. So folks listening, 2 people in a back room decided who should be the Democratic nominee for 35,000 mostly Black Democratic voters in the 200th legislative district. There was no public meetings. There was no discussion with committee people. They did not bring people before them and say, here are the people who have announced, let's talk to all of them. No, they just chose one of their own, and they got on the ballot. And so that meant me as a lifelong Democrat and as a Democratic committee person, I was not allowed to get on the ballot unless I changed to a Republican or Green Party or some other nonsense, or I ran as a write-in candidate. I got my butt kicked. I got destroyed. And then the establishment was like, okay, well, we got this because now this person is in office. And then 40 days later is the Democratic primary. Well, I beat them 40 days later because I was knocking on doors. And what I said to folks, my neighbors knocking at the doors with my two young sons and my small, group of campaign staffers was, our public servants should be elected, not selected. And let me tell you, that resonated because nobody wants to be taken for granted, that you have politicians in the back room deciding what's best for you when you're grown, when you want to make responsible decisions, when you want a choice. There was no choice. So 40 days later, I won by 7 points in a 3-person race, beating the incumbent. And the establishment lost their ever-loving mind. They're like, who is this guy? He didn't get a lot of endorsements. He's not a household name. He's not independently wealthy. He was doing the work. And then they came after me 2 years later. They put a ton of money to unseat me. But even Dwight Evans said, give the brother a chance. He's doing good work. And there was a rift, which is why now Dwight Evans supported one candidate and Sherelle Parker and the rest of the political establishment all went behind Street. So there's not even kind of unanimity in the establishment. But I'm not running to represent Democrats. I'm running to represent the constituents of the 3rd Congressional District, which includes unaffiliated voters. And the majority of young people and new voters are unaffiliated, and they're not allowed to vote in Pennsylvania primaries. I have a bill that would allow them, if you're unaffiliated, to vote in the Republican primary if you want, or the Democratic primary. And I believe that if we reach those folks, we can have more folks supporting good Democrats like me.
My God, this conversation has been incredible for me because all the questions I ever wanted to ask you that I thought maybe you wouldn't want to answer, you answered them and added some sauce on top. So you told all the business.
I just want to say real quickly, there is a narrative that I don't work well with others, right?
Yes, that was my next question.
Yeah,
you are arrogant and you don't work well with others and you show up because listen, I had a conversation recently that says we're afraid that he's going to win because he doesn't work well with others. He's going to go up to Congress and cuss out the white people about Israel. That was a conversation I got a phone call about that. Let's address Israel and Palestine and genocide. Why is it that they think you're so arrogant and that you don't know how to work well with others?
Well, let's discuss others. If we're talking about colleagues in Harrisburg, where I've worked for a decade, there's ample evidence that that's what I do best. Because how else is somebody with my politics coming from Philly? And Philly is not loved in Harrisburg, right? Because folks they think, oh, Philly takes all the money and all of this. So it's because I do know how to work with folks, but there are folks who I don't work well with because one, they do not want to bring me in because they don't want to have conversations that they're not ready to have, right? So if I'm supporting legislation that my own party doesn't like in Philly because it may make them less safe, they don't want to have that conversation. If they don't want to have a conversation about racism, they don't have a conversation about ICE. I introduced an anti-ICE legislation in 2017 when most Democrats were mute on it. They don't want to have that conversation. So I'm not going to work well with folks who are not prepared to do the work. And I don't need them to all agree with me. That's not the issue. I need them to have a conversation with me in good faith, whatever comes out. And that's something they're not prepared to do. I
Mhm.
cannot tell you how long I sought to reach out to establishment Dems after I won the primary in 2016. I was not well received. And a lot of people don't want to work with me, but are afraid of repercussions. Because if some people who are high up in the Democratic Party in Philadelphia see me as the enemy, then that means that folks who want to remain in good stead with them have to say, oh, I can't mess with Rep Rab. Or I may whisper, I like what you're doing, brother. I wish I could say more. Like, you
Mhm.
grown.
Mhm.
Say the
Mhm.
thing.
How
Like,
did we
don't let
get here?
people
How
control
did we
you.
get here, Rep Rab? Because I see it quite a bit. I was in a meet in a room some months ago, and a friend said, "I can't be in a picture with Dr. Stanford because I'm repping street." And I was like, "But you're in a picture. What are you talking about?" And sure enough, he got a call while I was sitting right beside him that says, "I see that she's in the room. You can't be, but you better not be seen in the picture." When did we get to this place where we rule people's lives by telling them who they cannot speak to, which is why I'm an independent person now, because I was over it. I was literally
But
over it.
so here's the thing. A political machine is an apparatus of a party, Democrat or Republican, that whose sole job is to concentrate political power. So it doesn't matter what the party affiliation is, Democrat or Republican, rural or urban. A political machine is an apparatus whose sole job is to concentrate power and to grow that power. I'm against that. So if you believe in the concentration of power at the expense of other people on the outside, then you're not going to want me in that room because that goes against my very values. That's not how I was raised. I believe in the diffusion of power. I believe in radiant love. You don't just hold love, you share love, right? You share knowledge. When they say knowledge is power, it's only powerful when you share that knowledge, which is why I love coming on these shows to learn and to share. That's why I was a teacher, right? Because the reason I loved to teach is because I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. And so when people seek to concentrate power and then you're outside and you're doing something that may ding that power, then you become the enemy, even though you're not doing anything wrong. So it could be taking a picture with an opponent because maybe you have a personal relationship, or maybe you like something about her, even though you're not going to vote for her. You're going to have this serious repercussions. I can't tell
From
you
the
how many people
party.
I've gotten in trouble by having a picture of them and them saying, "Hey, I just got a call because I took a picture with you. Can you remove it?" I'm like, "No, sister, I can't remove it. It's on 10,000 pamphlets. You consented to be in a picture, and it's out there. It shouldn't have to be this way." Which is why 4 out of 5 Democratic voters stayed at home 4 years ago for this primary for congressional primary. They stayed home because they're tired of this mess. None of this is going to improve their lives. All this nonsense. I can listen, and there's a number of Democrats in this city who have consistently supported my opponents who are in elective office, and I've still worked with them, who I consider colleagues. And I say, look, that's politics. I don't take it personal. I'm still going to work with you. Senator Art Haywood, who has never endorsed me. Our politics are very similar. We come from different political families or whatever. I don't actually don't believe I'm part of a political family, but we work very closely together. I'm able as a professional and as a public servant to say, that's politics, this is policy. We have people who we're trying to help. I take that seriously. So this notion that I don't know how to work well with others is a fiction. What is true is that there's folks who don't want to mess with me because they don't like what I stand for, and they don't like the fact that I have independent thought, and I'm nobody's rubber stamp, and I don't kiss any rings, and I'm unapologetic about that.
I see now. I see now the fear. I see. I recognize it now because I kept saying, "What is happening here?" And I'm grateful. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you in this transparent way and to ask the questions. Here's one for listeners who may not know you yet. What is the biggest misconception about you, and what do you want them to understand about your campaign?
Well, I don't know what the biggest misconception is, but most people don't know who I am because I just represent 70,000 people in a city of
Mhm,
1.6 million, trying
mhm,
to represent a district of roughly
mhm,
800,000. So I am not a household name. I don't have a family name. I don't have the wealth of one opponent and the insider endorsements of the other.
mhm,
I have a track record. I have a legacy that I've inherited from freedom fighters for centuries in this country that has been my North Star for service. I'm seeking to serve. That is its own reward. I'm not seeking to use this as a springboard to run for a even higher office. That is not my interest. My interest is being the best member of Congress I could possibly be for the third congressional district, and also to be a bonus rep to all those people across the nation who do not have good representation in Congress, who want to see themselves in government, to know that government can actually work for them and with them in the most meaningful ways in the darkest times. That's what I want people to know about me. Like, I don't feel like I'm owed this. Anything I do, I want to earn it. I want to earn it. And so I just want to make sure that people understand
mhm,
not just that I'm running, but why I'm running. I am
mhm,
unapologetic in a bold vision of holding up communities of struggle towards collective liberation. It is what I believe. It's what I was instilled from the time I was a toddler to this moment as a parent of two Black boys who I love. And I want to make sure that their generation and generations to come have all the richness of opportunity that they deserve, irrespective of the bodies they inhabit or the zip codes they're born in.
mhm. Do you believe what you're doing will create more voices that want to stand up and speak truth to power and run in a different way versus following the Democratic machine? For years, Chris, I have been saying to, and I mean since 2016, the Democratic Party is old, outdated. I'm not popular with them either. So I just want you to know. Old, outdated, not listening to the voices of Black women, telling us we should know our places. And even when they gave us spaces to be in power, quote unquote, we were still being checked and challenged. And, do you believe that the voice that you carry, where you're just moving straight ahead despite what they're telling you can or can't do, will create a space for other voices to stand up to run for office, because we need more of this versus, this one's going to win because there's a machine in place for that, you know what I mean? It's
I
we
do.
are so disgusted, and more Democrats and Republicans have become independents in the last several years than the law should allow, which means they cannot vote in the primaries. Do you think your standing up the way you have been will create more of a space for others to do that?
It already has. We have two Black progressive members of city council who are not even Democrats. We
Mhm,
have Council Member Nicholas O'Rourke and
mhm,
Council Member Kendra Brooks,
mhm,
unapologetically Black, progressive, substantive
mhm,
leaders in city council. Together, they got rid of the last vestiges of Republicans in the city council.
mhm,
Unheard of. I was a ward leader. I was a ward leader when they were running, and I endorsed them as a private citizen. I did not
mhm,
use the resources of the Democratic Party to
mhm,
support non-Democrats because that goes against the bylaws of the Democratic City Committee, and I respected that. I got brought to task by Bob Brady and all the other ward leaders across the city back then, and they went after me. They were lambasting me, telling me how awful I was and how I was a traitor and so forth. And I said, I am a Black progressive elected. You better believe I'm going to fully support highly competent Black progressive
mhm,
candidates for public office. I'm not
mhm,
standing back on it. And it almost came to blows. I have
mhm,
witnesses you can talk to. It almost came to blows, but I was not going to pull back on that. Of course, I was going to endorse them. And they both won. It took two times for Nicholas O'Rourke to win, but
mhm,
he's in there doing great work. Kendra Brooks is a legislative leader in our
mhm,
city. This is happening already. There are
mhm,
more people who are trying, and it's not just about people running for office, but it's about them being engaged. It's about them registering to vote. It's about them
mhm,
actually voting after they register. It's
mhm,
about them joining campaigns and volunteering or
mhm,
giving $5 to a campaign or understanding the importance of public policy or showing up at protests,
mhm,
rallies, meetings,
mhm,
finding yourself in community to believe that it's not just about identifying the problem, but being part of the solution. That's been happening for years. But after this collective victory, and it will be a collective victory on May 19th, it will empower all kinds of people, both individually and also organizationally, to do the kind of work that the establishment Democrats do not want, because it will disrupt their comfort and safety, which is a good thing, because no one should feel comfortable. We have to make sure that we hold our electeds to account, myself included. That's why I come wherever I am invited, even if it's in a hostile environment, because that's my job. I'm a public servant. I don't need to say, oh, well, those folks are going to be mean to me, I'm not going to show up, or I'm not going to answer that question because I don't feel they deserve to ask me that question. No, that's the life I chose. I'm walking in my purpose. It's not because this is something I would love to do if I didn't have to do it, but I have to do it because this is my ministry. And I'm not a religious person. I use that term metaphorically, but this is something that this is what I'm supposed to do. And even if things don't work out on May 19th, my purpose is my purpose. The position may change, my purpose will not.
So I have 3 questions. One of them is, you were the only person that gave, well, Dr. Ayla came from somewhere else, but you decided to give up the office that you're currently in. Is it that you can't run anymore as a state rep, that you decided to run for Congress? Or is it that you just gave up the office to run for Congress? Which is it?
I'm done with Harrisburg. I put in 10 good years. And I want to, and this is hard work running for Congress, particularly with folks coming at me like this. They're coming at me from the right? The extremists are coming after me hard, and then the establishment Dems are coming at me no less hard. I wanted to be all in, and I wanted people to know that I don't need this, that I'm not relying on a safety net. So if things don't work out, oh, I can just keep my day job. No, I'm doing this because I believe that we will win, right? I believe that we will win. That is what I'm rooted in. So I don't want to have a safety net. And also I want to create opportunity for others. There's this young brother who's running for my current seat named Chris Johnson. And he's the type of young person who we need more of, right? We need to create a pipeline of talent. So, and I don't want to be in any seat for a long time. I don't care how good they are. No one should be in office for 50 years. No, I don't believe that. And it doesn't make the person bad.
And every time I have a conversation, don't leave such and such alone, and don't talk about such and such. Seriously, there should be term limits for everybody. When you walk into Washington, D.C., and you look at the senators, it is shameful how old they are and how long they have been in office. And for some reason, we think that this is okay. Congress too, right? So I agree with you on that piece. The last question I have for you is this. Jamie Raskin and someone I adore, Jane Fonda. I just reposted a video that I took with her in 2016 at the United States of Women. Oh, I have 2 questions for you. United States of Women. And she spoke, so it was my biggest, when I put up the platform, thousands and thousands of people shared it. Jamie Fonda is the absolute truth. She endorsed you.
Yeah, that was wild.
That is huge.
I was on a Zoom call. It was a virtual fundraiser, and Jane Fonda volunteered. She's like, "Would you like me to join the virtual fundraiser?" I'm like, "Wait, the Jane Fonda, or like a Jane Fonda like impersonator?" Right? And she said, "No, Jane Fonda's volunteered to come on." And then she said all these wonderful things about me in front of my mother. So that was huge, because I'm not going to get the political class's endorsement. The most important endorsement I could ever have is the endorsement of the people and the voters. That's what matters most. But to have someone like Jane Fonda, have someone like Jamie Raskin, right? To have someone like Summer Lee, my bonus rep, the first Black woman to be elected in Congress from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Who was almost gerrymandered out of her district by
no. She was gerrymandered. She does not live in her district. They just cut around her house, and she still won. And then she won again. And they said a Black radical woman couldn't win for Pittsburgh with a population of 12% Black. This district is 51% Black. And she won as a bold, unapologetic left-wing Democrat. in Western Pennsylvania. That tells you how powerful this sister is. And she's about 20 years younger than me, too. And yet I have the humility to follow people who may come from a younger generation, who may be women, who may be people of color, may all kinds of folks, because leadership is leadership. And when it's bold and it's unwavering, those are the folks I want to roll with. So when people say I don't know how to work with people, the Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsed me. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Summer Lee, Latifah Simons in Oakland. All these folks have looked at who's running, and they've shown that they say, no, this is the brother we want to bring to Washington, D.C. with us to be positive reinforcements, because no one does it alone. None of the things I'm most proud of, I've ever done alone. And that's what I tell my sons. Like, whatever you care about most, whatever you're proudest of, look around. There are people who helped you make that happen. No one does it alone. That's why I say that May 19th will be a collective victory, because it's not about the advancement of Chris Rabb. It's about the advancement of shared prosperity and collective liberation to move Philadelphia to become the city it truly deserves to be. It's a beautiful city that we shouldn't be centering poverty in its description. We should talk about its fabulosity, its amazing neighborhoods, its rich history and culture. These are the things we need to lift up. And that's the energy I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. I just need people to help me get there.
Oh, amen. The last question I have for you is Dr. Stanford accused this congressional race, UN Sharif Street, as being misogynistic towards her. Can you tell us more about why she would say that, and what is your response to that?
I don't know the sister that well to know what would motivate her to say something like that. But what I do know is she has not said anything I've said that would qualify as sexist or misogynistic or inappropriate in any way. The tension points that we've had along this campaign trail is exclusively around how our campaigns are funded and how that may impact where we stand on issues and how some candidates have evolved on their stances in the course of just a few months. So I've asked her, like, why did you start on one side of several issues and then you are now on the other in just a matter of months? I think that's a reasonable question. Anyone can ask me anything like that. I wouldn't consider it racist or sexist or classist. It's a fair question. I've also questioned where both of my opponents get their money. They do both get a lot of money from AIPAC donors. They don't get money from AIPAC because AIPAC is smart enough to not directly give to campaigns, because their brand is about as bad as the Democratic Party is now. So what they do is they have their donors give to candidates. So both Street and Dr. Stanford receive money, large amounts of money, from AIPAC donors and folks who give to AIPAC intermediaries. That's a fact. And it has been reported on as well.
Rev Rab. But everybody came after Dr. Ayla. I did not hear a soul talk about Street receiving money. You see how this thing works?
Yes, I do. And I think that is sexism. But I've been consistent. I've been consistent in saying that both of them, because that is a play. What happens is AIPAC and AIPAC supporters and allies, they will fund all the candidates who will be silent on the genocide or say pro-Israel things. And then when they see which one of them has the best chance, they'll put all their money into them. Well, that candidate was Dr. Stanford until things went sideways, right? And then it was revealed, and my comments were affirmed by investigative reporting that she indeed was benefiting from AIPAC money, albeit indirectly. Those are facts. So much so that when Street stood up to defend Dr. Stanford against what he thought were scurrilous attacks by me, in the last major debate with WHYY, he publicly apologized to me and said, I thought what you were saying was inappropriate and were rumors. Now we know from independent journalistic, investigation was in fact true. The piece that was left out was he has not acknowledged that some of his biggest donors are strong APAC supporters. And I think that's problematic. And it may explain why he refuses to acknowledge the genocide in Gaza. And the reason the issue of Gaza and Palestine keeps coming up, and I've gotten some hits from some Black folks saying, you talk more about Gaza than the ghetto, right? But I'm not bringing this stuff up. I'm responding to folks. And I connect the dots by saying, Black folk can't be free until Palestinians are free. I believe in collective liberation. Their oppression is an extension of ours. It's born out of white supremacy and white Christian nationalism that impact and victimize Black folk in this country. And the money we send over there is the money that we could be using to fully fund schools so we don't have to shut down 17 public schools in the city of Philadelphia. This is money that we can use to eradicate poverty and homelessness and help veterans and do all of those things. It's all connected. But I don't bring this issue up. It always comes up. And here's the last thing I want to say, because you mentioned young people. When I introduce myself to folks 35 and younger of all backgrounds, and the polling is clear, young Black folk care about Palestine. They ask me when they don't know anything about me, they say, what's your position on Palestine? And they say, how you answer this will determine if I trust you on any other issue that I care about even more. And I say, well, I believe in a free Palestine, and we are complicit in a genocide raging in Gaza. That's it. I don't have to do all this dancing around the issue. I can say it. Why can't my two opponents acknowledge that we are complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza? It's because of who funds their campaigns. And I'm very clear about who funds mine. Anyone can look. It is publicly accessible through the Federal Elections Commission website, and you will see that I have thousands of donors, small donors. I don't have corporate PACs. I don't have insider elites giving me money. I have regular people. And that allows me to speak truth to power and not worry that if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to get a phone call from a rich donor and say, we can't support you anymore, because my power is diffused among thousands of donors and not concentrated among a couple hundred. And that's the big difference in terms of how I run my campaign from both opponents. So yes, Dr. Stanford has gotten a lot of heat for her connection to AIPAC, but we should not be asking ourselves, which candidate should we support? The one who takes a lot of money from AIPAC intermediaries, or one who takes some? We should not be electing anyone who is influenced by AIPAC and AIPAC allies, because they are part of the problem. They are the ones who are congratulating Donald Trump for bombing civilians in Iran. That's who AIPAC is. AIPAC is a racist organization. I have nothing to do with them. And I believe that it is also unfair to conflate Jewish people with the Israeli government, because there are many Jewish people, many courageous Jewish people who say, I'm not going to let my faith and my social identity be hijacked by extremists and folks who do not believe that Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians in particular don't have a self-determination. I won't do that.
This was an excellent interview. I have yet to hear from the street camp. Not sure if they're ever going to respond, and that's okay. Dr. Ayla has been on here a few times, and so if you want to come back on before we May 19th, feel free to send a message. And if you have a message you want to give, because I'm giving you open space, like I've given every candidate that we've invited into the conversation.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't take that for granted, because like I said, there are a lot of people who may be hearing me for the first time and not through social media and say, oh, I heard this, but now they're hearing us in conversation, getting a sense of who I am, why I'm running, and why it matters. And I don't take that for granted, because I don't have these opportunities, even though I'm a state representative, been in office for 10 years. These are conversations that are not happening in mainstream journalism, and also in communities that are intermediated by people who are connected to the establishment, who don't want people to hear from me because they're afraid that what I might say might resonate with the people they are trying to subdue.
State Rep Chris Rabb, thank you so much for joining us today. Jennifer says, thank you, win or lose. Please come back. Such a rich conversation. Today's show was fire. Like they are really this is the secret sauce that I have, State Red Rab, is that
Well,
I
it ain't
have
secret. It ain't, the secret's out. The secret is out. If you think this is a secret, you are sorely.
so my so my secret sauce was always giving people the platform to speak naturally, not holding them to anything, asking them the thoughtful questions without making them feel like it's a got you, I can't
Right.
stand that, well, what about what this is that's my secret sauce. And I've been able to navigate through that space so that people are able to come on, win, lose, or draw. Do you know my hardest critics were the ones who said you can't interview Republicans? We're black people. I said, get the hell out. This is why I am doing this independently. I'm like, well, what the hell? What the hell? Why are we doing this then if we're only interviewing certain people
We
on
learn the
certain
most from
criteria?
people who don't share our worldview.
Thank you. That part.
I feel very strongly about my opinions, but it's only going to improve if I know how
Mhm.
other people are thinking and have the humility to take anything from them and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I appreciate your perspective."
Yeah.
That's how that's how I've evolved as a public servant and as a human being. I don't want to be in a room with everybody agreeing with me. I want to be held to account and learn from other people's perspectives and also have the opportunity to positively influence others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will be reposting this show today.
All right.
It is so important because people, and your people can take it, and Dr. Stanford's people did the same. They took their show and they cut it up however they want to. You are more than free to do exactly that. You have my blessing, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. You want to come back on? Please let us know. We appreciate your taking this more than an hour. It's been an hour and about 25 minutes, and I'm grateful for that. I appreciate
Well,
it.
guess what? I'm coming back.
Okay.
It's on.
Will do. Will
Mm.
do. See you
All
soon.
right.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
All right. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Yo, I remember Pastor Waller saying to me back in 2018, early 19, he says, there's something about the way you interview people that makes them feel comfortable enough to have the conversations. I don't care who you are. If you are afraid to come and talk to me, it's because you know you ain't right. Because I'm never the person that says, I'm never the person going to say, I got you. I'm going to ask you. If you're not willing to answer the tough questions, I asked this man every striking question, and some I didn't have to ask him because he already took it upon himself to answer it and to go into to doing this. Says, what a way to come back from vacation. I don't play about this show. So when people say, you got to get more subscribers, you got to get more likes, what I say to them is, while I build it, they will come. People can subscribe and like, but I want them to have the kind of content that'll make them say, oh yeah, this sister's going to interview people in a way, she's going to ask the hard questions, she's going to make sure that the voices are heard. Right. And so that's been a large part of my discourse because, people are like, well, you are black, so you must be Democrat and you must vote. You must tell people to vote for this one and that one. Hell to the no. If I'm covering the news and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, my role is to never tell you who to vote for. My role is to put the people in front of you, get them to understand, to let those people, as those people speak, you, the viewers, you, the voters, get to make up your mind about who you want. It was a hell of a way to come back from vacation because I'm not playing with y'all out here. We're going to have Joanna McClinton on soon, and we've got a bunch of other people coming on. This is the idea of Mornings with Mother. So if you're coming on to hear the shucking and jiving and to just agree with you, it's not going to happen. If you are willing to take on the subject matters and to have the hard conversations about people, places, and things, which is why David Alexander Jenkins went from just being a guest to being on every Monday, because he's well researched, well read, etc., etc. And you cannot be a one topic thing. It can't be about just what you want. It's about what's best for the collective. And so, yeah, this is where we are. My grandchildren have been calling me. I'm back. I got to go out to work today. I got to make my meal prep for this week, all the things. I love you all dearly. This episode, yes, 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 yes. Sharon says, glad he's coming back. David said it was a good interview. Lynette Hill says this was an awesome interview. Definitely need him back on. Yeah, I'm going to have him back on. Win, lose, or draw, I'm going to have him back on because you can tell he's been out here looking at the subject matters and have been at this for a while. And this is not just, talking for talking's sake. He's controversial because he does not fall in line with a lot of the people. Is he perfect? No. Is Dr. Ayla perfect? No. Is Sharif Street perfect? No. But you, as the voters, get to decide who you want in this third congressional race, because Dwight Evans brought a lot of money back into the third congressional district and did a lot of improvements, while he sat in office. Shaka Fatah did a lot too. So, we want to make sure that this continues and that it's not just business as usual. This episode of Mornings with Moppa is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everyone.